Francois. I wanted to, when Francois asked me to do this, I didn't really know what I really wanted to talk about because there's so many things that's been impactful in my career. And, tonight, I just wanted to give you guys just a perspective of some of the things I probably could have done a lot earlier in my career because I want to make it personal to me because I don't like to talk at people. Uh, but I want to make it personal to me, and how I didn't use some of these opportunities and some of these skills and didn't know some of these methodologies. And it concerned me well in my career later, but earlier I think it could have done some things to catapult me to levels that could have been a lot higher. So so just to give you guys a little bit, Francois talked about my career a little bit. Uh, give you a little bit more about me. From a family standpoint, I'm married. My wife is also a civil engineer, graduated from Southern University, and she's kind of like the LeBron James of the family. Okay, so she's a vice president at Walmart, and she owns the Southeast division for the grocery network. So when you think about anything from a grocery standpoint that's in Walmart's, from the Carolinas all the way down to Florida's, like Alabama's, they go through her facilities and she supply those areas. Um, so she's a lot smarter than me. So she probably should be the one doing this presentation. Okay. But I have twin boys. They both attend Howard University. One is they're in the junior year. The one in the red shirt is in his junior year in finance. And the one in the blue shirt is in his junior year, second semester, junior year uh, in economics. So my career has spanned for, oh man, like Francois said, like I started off from making Jif peanut butter, right? Choosy Mom Choose Jif, to I went to Downy, to Tide brands. Then I went to go make personal care brands like Tam brands, which is tampons. Uh, and then I went to go make an internal product called perfume. So for the company, and some external products like Dolce and Gabbana and all those type of perfumes that P&G used to sell back in the day. And then after about 23 years at Procter, living abroad in Singapore, we started to, get recruited by a lot of different companies. And my wife being the LeBron James, right, of the team, or the Michelle Obama of the team, right? We start getting these offers and these opportunities that kind of pulled us away from P&G, and we went on this journey into aerospace. Uh, and then from aerospace, we got sucked into Walmart, right? So that's what we are today. So from a personal standpoint, like I said, Southern University, active member for 30 years of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And I currently sit on the board of directors for Southern University Foundation. So what I want to talk to you guys about tonight is this thing called PI, right? And how many folks have heard of PI? PI stands for, performance, image, and exposure, right? And so, and this whole thing around PI and how do you build your brand equity? I would tell you guys very, very early in my career, I had one thing that was very important to me, right? And what was very important to me was delivering performance. Me being an athlete in college, all American, very good, and just very competitive all my life. So it was like if I had a job to do, I was going to go off and I'm going to deliver it. I was going to deliver with excellence, and I really didn't care about anyone else but winning, right? And that was a strength of mine, and this also was a weakness of mine, right? So and I'll talk a little bit about that. So the agenda that we're going to cover today is like, how do we define success? Talk a little bit about PI, talk a little bit about personal brand equity, and then I'm going to leave you with some homework, like points to ponder, right? So what I did take down when we first started here, we got anywhere between 20 years to, 3 to 4 years out here in the industry. So some of this stuff you may already know, some of this stuff you may not know at all, right? So if there's any time, that you need clarity, either we can answer questions in the end, or you guys can feel free to jump in at any time to ask, okay? So, one of the things that I really believe, that when you talk about building blocks for success is just not, did I get a promotion, right? Is really success is, are you really enjoying what you're doing? Do you have the right family life balance? Do you feel fulfilled when you come to work every day? And I always tell you from myself, even when I was very young in my career and I was just driving, giving performance, I had some voids and some gaps, right? Because I was like, I was told many times, you know what, Kelvin, you're a bull in a china shop, right? Yeah, you get the results, but man, you really tear up a lot of stuff when you do it, right? So, and at that time, I really wasn't feeling fulfilled. The other thing about the building blocks of success is, like, how do you define your aspiration, right? I don't know how many folks on this call got a journey map, kind of like where you at today and where you want to be at the end of your career. And like, what are the stair steps for you to get there, right? We used to call them career maps back in the day, where we used to just every 2 to 3 years, we would talk about where the next level we want to be at, what skills or core competencies that we developed, and how do we basically position ourselves for multiple opportunities in the future. The other building block to success is, hey, you own your success. I know when I was early in my career, I believed that, my boss owned my success, my my site leader, my director, and I was just looking for something. Hey, I'm getting these great results, so you should give me my reward. Like, where's my carrot? Where's my huge raise? Where's my promotion in front of everybody else? And it doesn't work like that all the time, right? You have to own it, and there's strategic ways on how you own your success, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the other piece was a career planning. I was waiting on someone to come to me and say, hey, this is your next assignment, versus me thinking about my next assignment, versus me understanding what are the changes that could be happening in the company and how I'm positioning myself to be accessible or to be positioned for those changes, right? And so, it was just a lot of misunderstanding in my life, early in my career, that I thought those things were being managed by folks that were supposed to be managing my career or leading me in the organization, and it just didn't exist, right? So when you think about the performance, image, and exposure, what we call the pie. The pie is the foundational, I call it the food or the nourishment that you need to have that brand equity, no matter in what you do and what you choose to do in your career. All right. And the 3 dimensions is basically performance, image, and exposure. Okay. So when you think about just the whole formula for success, like, and this is just a pictorial, not going to go to the whole process, but typically when you come to a company, you got some skill or you got some degree, right? You got interpersonal training. So I call it your whole charismatic power, the uniqueness that you bring to the organization. And then you take that and then you add it into this thing called, performance, right? Right. And your image and your personal equity, and you multiply that times, like, what exposure you're getting. Like, do you have a good mentorship? Do you have good sponsorships and advocacy? Do you have good coaching? Each one of those areas means something totally different. A mentor is an individual that you can go to and you can talk about anything, non-threatening. You can say, hey, look, I hate Kelvin. He makes me sick. And sometimes I want to take him and hit him in the car outside of work. So it's like non-threatening. Okay. All right. Your coach is typically could be a peer, could be someone in your organization. It could be someone higher, someone that's going to give you skills and capabilities that allow you to be successful or enable you or build capability for you to be successful. And then this whole sponsorship, right? Who's your sponsor? A sponsor is someone that's typically 2 to 3 levels up in the organization that has your back, that knows your skills and capabilities, knows your abilities to deliver, and they can make moves for you. And I would tell you, early in my career, I had coaches, right? I had very few people that I would talk to, right, and be authentic, all right, that was really a safe haven for me. And I had no sponsorship. So all of that great work that I was doing, I had nobody to say, I'm gonna pull Kelvin and put him here, or I'm gonna fight for Kelvin, or I'm gonna make moves for Kelvin, right? So that whole supportive environment, right? I didn't have it, but I had the performance piece. And so by not having that, I don't think I was as successful as I could have been, right, early in my career. So when you multiply all those things together, you add some things, multiply, typically can lead to success, right? And so that's the formula piece. When you think about pie as how it all breaks out, right? So many people say, this pie is distributed evenly, right? If you go out there and you just type in the pie model, you'll see various different, you'll see performance a lot smaller, image and exposure a lot larger, but performance is pretty straightforward, right? It's pretty clear. Everybody knows what performance is. Your image, that's when it start getting in, you start touching your brand, right? And we'll talk a little bit about brand in the future, but it's your reputation, credibility, how savvy you are. Like, what's your style? What's your style when there's tough situations? What's your style when there's regular situations, right? Is your style, and are you savvy enough where no matter what going on, like people just say, this person can handle that type of stress or opportunity that exists. And then the exposure piece, like, how many times, and I don't know about you guys, but many times in my career, I was doing all of this great work, but I never would send out an email saying how great it was, right? I never would celebrate the gains. I just assumed people knew. And I was telling my the person I was reporting to, and I was assuming that he was, sharing the information, and, it wasn't being shared. So, then what visibility do you have outside of your core organization into networks and then the sponsorship? Okay. So we're going to break down image and exposure a little bit, because this is where I think, the biggest opportunity exists. So, why is PI important? Like the P, of course, is necessary for us to even be on the playing field. Like if you don't have performance, you don't have anything. You have no right to even, be in the room, right? But the I and the E, the image and exposure, is really the more critical as you progress up the ladder in the company. Because when senior leaders choose to pick their team, they pick people, the P is already assumed. They pick people that they feel like that can fit a critical piece of their puzzle within their team from an image standpoint, and they've been recognized from an exposure standpoint as someone that will deliver, their objectives, right? All right. And then the whole thing around the I and the E is critical in creating alliances, right? The whole image and the exposure. If you don't have alliances, if you don't have partners, that may be another word that you heard people use. Your personal value proposition be hard to really be recognized and attained or understood, because you don't have anybody that's going to speak when you're not sitting in the room. When an opportunity comes up, they may not say anything. They just may be quiet because they don't know, right? Right. And the whole fit and comfort about the image and exposure is so important. Like, it allows folks to understand how you fit and how comfort can they be when they interact with you if they choose to give you an opportunity in the organization, right? So pies is in, this whole pie model is so important, because I would tell you that a lot of younger people think that, the P is the key, right? So when you break down image, Like, what I found out that, and I used to say this all the time early in my career. I'm like, I really don't care what people, perceive about me, because I'm gonna be Kelvin and I'm gonna be authentic, and I really don't care. And that was a, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. That was good. I've been gradually getting through that. Yeah.
Okay, somebody wasn't on mute, but I used to say things like that, right? And the most important thing is that your image definitely precedes you anywhere you go. So people are building, your image is kind of like the foundation of your brand equity, and they're saying things about you before you get there. And it's whatever the first impression that people have of you, it affects definitely how people relate to you. And honestly, it's probably the one that is the most misunderstood, right? Because I definitely misunderstood it because I didn't care about people's perceptions. And what I found out as I got older in my career, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, people perceptions are their personal realities. And if you have folks in leadership that have influence over decisions, and their perception of you, of your image, is not good, it can affect you tremendously, from a promotion, from a pay, from an opportunity, right? Which I would tell people all the time, that really takes generational wealth from people that could be doing way much better than, financially and career wise and influencing wise in their overall career. Okay. So the other piece right here is the exposure piece. And the why this is so important, that they say this is the engine for the performance and the image, right? So many times I was taught early in my career that you don't supposed to brag on yourself. You shouldn't brag on yourself, because people are gonna think you're conceited, or people are gonna think that you're proud, or that you're not a team player. And what I've learned in my career is that when you don't take the time to celebrate, when you don't take the time to talk about yourself in a positive format, no one else may not take that time, right? So it's critical, and I tell folks all the time, when I was early in my career, I used to finish a meeting and I'd be like, hey, here's the notes from the meeting. Here's the follow-up list. Please, send me email if you have any questions. And then I had somebody coach me one day. He was like, man, that was a pretty boring meeting. Now I was like, no, man, it was an awesome meeting, man. We had great attendance. Everybody was there. We came up with all these phenomenal ideas. He said, but your email didn't say that. He said, your email should have said, we had an outstanding meeting today with, extraordinary attendance that resulted in some breakthrough, action plans that's going to deliver the overall objectives of the company by 20%. And he was just saying, you need to make it grown and sexy, right? And I'm like, grown and sexy, what are you talking about? You need to market yourself. If you're doing great work, how do you not market yourself, right? So the exposure piece, we own it, right? We should be using that to gain broad sponsorship and support, right? And in some of the challenges is like when you talk about the multicultural talent, it's limited in on how they can really expose themselves. So, a lot of times we don't have the advocacy out there as African Americans, right? Folks that look like us sitting at a very high level to do that for us. So we have to take that advantage to do it for ourselves, right? And so you see a lack of consistent, you see intermediate supervisors consistently, utilize their network. So how do we leverage this whole exposure to leverage our networks, whether it's within an organization like this, or support organizations within your company, or to organizations that you typically won't participate in? How do you get engaged, and how do you show people some of your skills and talents and your contributions that you're delivering to the company, right? So exposure is extremely important. So I wanted to share this with you real quick around, what it means to be good to great, right? And I have this conversation, there's some senior folks in this call, so you guys probably already know this, but, a lot of times when I'm working with young people coming out of college, and I say, okay, you have a role description, And you know, in your role description, you got 10 things you need to deliver, and you deliver all of those 10 things with excellence, right? And you've achieved that result, and you know, if you had to grade yourself an A, B, or C, what would be your grade? And most people would say, well, you know, I did everything my role said. I should be an A. So everybody else has done that, right? Everybody, you got 30 people, they all achieved the goal, you know, and they all checked off everything on the list. So that's good. You know, good in corporate America is probably a C average, right? So what makes you great? Right? You know, and if you think about pie, I'm not going to read through all of these, but you know, from a performance standpoint, you know, it's not playing to lose, it's playing to win. And it's not just hitting the numbers, it's like transforming the industry, leaving your legacy, setting records, right? From an image standpoint, you know, it's like, do you support the change? Do you do your job well, or are you a change agent and you're driving and you personally leading the change? You're the person that everybody is saying, did you see what they did? Did you see the result they made? Like, you know, and then you're savvy with it, right? You know, you're building consensus. You know, you're building others who want to participate in that process, right? And then the last piece of it is, you know, are you a niche type of worker, which means, you know, you working within your small group, right? Or are you taking the work that you're doing and you're your own you advocating for yourself, right? And you're explaining that to your mentors and sponsors and people outside of the group, some phenomenal work that either you've led or you've built capability within an organization to deliver, right? So that's the difference, you know, when you think about how things differentiate between your pie around good to great. And I always use the word good. Good is like, for me, is being unique, you know, and I learned this when I lived in Singapore, when my kids were getting ready to graduate high school. And the recruiter was like, well, everybody is unique or good. If you graduate high school and you play an instrument, you play sports, you made a 4.0, you made a good score on your SAT or ACT, okay, you're unique. But what makes you special? Like, what differentiates you from anyone else? What have you done that is truly extraordinary, like out of the box, game changing, S curve type of impacts that only a small percentage of folks have obtained? Okay, so now, since we talked about the pie, I just want to spend a few slides on, you know, what it means about brand equity, right? So, you know, the brand equity is kind of like, you know, if you take the overall definition of it, and I'm just going to translate the overall definition to what it means from a people standpoint. So it's your commercial value. That's what the definition said, right? From a consumer perception of a brand name, of a particular product or service, right? So if you think about it personally, it's your net value creation, right? That derives from a, you know, organization perception or company perception, right? Of your personal name, who you are, and what particular product or service can you provide, right? And a lot of times it's the perception of what you can provide versus the actual product or service itself. And that last sentence is so important because it's not what, you know, and I don't know how many times early in my career I would just get so, I used the word frustrated, but I should have used the word disappointed. That, like, how is this person getting rewarded, right? I mean, they didn't deliver that much, right? But it was a brand equity. It's how folks thought about it. Now, there's other factors that play into corporate America, you know, who we are, our color, and all this other stuff. You know, all of those other things that you see, institutional racism, all of it. So yeah, we're dealing with that, right? We got that. That's, you know, that's on the list. But these are things that we can try to control, we can try to influence, and we can try to build that brand equity to position ourselves to really, really be great or special. Okay, so that's how the definition break down from a overall definition to an individual. Now, I just threw this slide in here, you know, and these are some phenomenal, powerful people, right? When you think of these people, there's a lot of things that come to mind, right? You know, and I just took the definition of a brand, a picture, and put to the side. When you think of, the phenomenal Michelle Obama, you think of, just, her strategy, why she was Madam Vice President, how she used the social media to really market, right, what she was doing, the whole brand identity that she created, the trust that she enabled from people, right, and all of that came from a design and a strategic value, right, that they came up with, a strategic design. And now you think about it, her posts, her book tours, to her ability to sign these contracts along with the Mr. President, former president, on Netflix and stuff like that. And their worth is just phenomenal now from a value standpoint. When you look at all of the talented women on this picture, and you can go on and on about all of these folks, but all of these folks got a brand equity. When you think of their names, something come to mind. From the Sojourner Troops to the Harriet Tubmans to the, to Mrs. King is on there. All of these folks got something extremely valuable, and they all got a level of brand that is so important. Okay, so that's what I want you to take away from there. So the last few slides is, so I'm gonna leave you with, like, how do you create a successful brand? And I took some definitions from industry, and I kind of tried to relate it to, what I thought was important from an individual and corporate America standpoint. Your performance is your price of entry, right? So great performance is not good performance, great performance, which is above your base expectations. All right. The other piece is like, you got to define who are your consumer and customer. And I put some parentheses out there around, are you a servant leadership? Like, the people that you work with, the people that you serve every day, are you removing barriers, issues, opportunities, and are you making their lives better by creating that level of value, right? When you think about it from what do your product stands for? Like, what's your personal equity? Right. So it's the same as brand equity. So, like, what's important to you? How is that importance translated into the company? And that drives, like, your needs and desire. Like, are you meeting the company objectives and goals? Right. Like, are you meeting and exceeding those? Or do you understand which ones are strategic? Right. That if you deliver that, everybody else is going to forget about everything else. So do you understand that? The next one is the whole communication and the reason to believe, right? And demonstrate to believe. I don't know if you guys ever heard of a mantra, or the CBN stands for compelling business need. But what's your mantra? Nike say just do it. So what is the 1 or 2 words that describes who you are, and how do you live by that, right? Not like, what gives you the reason to believe that you're going to be successful, right? The good marketing strategy and execution, right? I put in there, like, best in class delivery. Like, whatever you're delivering, there's nothing should be trying to compete with what you're delivering. You should be delivering the best every day, right? And it's not and I don't want to put an unfair pressure on somebody, because you're going to have days where you're going to miss some things. But how are you taking those learnings, reapplying that into the plan, from like a whole Covey standpoint, plan, do, check, act, right? Or plan, do, adjust, act, right? How are you doing that on a daily basis to continue to bring their best in class delivery? The other thing is around, like, provides good value. This is something I want you guys to really, really remember. Some of you guys may understand it. I didn't understand it early in my company. Just because I'm delivering performance doesn't mean I'm creating net value. So how are you creating value for anything or anybody or any company you're working for? And how is that value going to their bottom line? So whether it's a P&L, whether it's an organizational capability, How are you creating value for the company? When you see yourself in this company, what is your net worth? What have you delivered that makes you special, right? And availability and accessibility. Do you have partnerships with people? And I put the word platinum. It's not gold, it's not silver, it's not stainless steel, it's platinum. Like, do you have the type of partnerships with people where people are asking for you when you're not in the room, right? They're asking, I want this person to be part of that team because I know what I'm going to get day in and day out. And the code consistency, right? You know, we think about high standards in quality, performance, etc. Like, you know, those are things that you don't compromise from day to day. And then the other one is just whatever you do from growing with the consumers and competition. So do you know who your competition is, right? Like, whether it's from a company competition standpoint and what's their results, metrics, or whatever, or from a, you know, a organization where you need to understand like who is viewed as, you know, the top talent, right? And how do you shamelessly learn from them, you know, role model, take some of the opportunities that are some of the strengths that they have and continue to rebuild yourself so you become second to none. So you were in that first top tier group, okay? And then the last couple is, you know, how do you differentiate, you know, from competition? And I use the word unique to special. We talked about that already. But special is not, you know, like when I grew up, did you ride on that short bus to school? Special means that you really is sought after. People will come find you when there's a opportunity because it's what you bring to the table, right? And then the last one is you have to do all of this without creating negative impacts to your environment, community, or to yourself, personal health. So you know, it's a lot of other things goes in there, family life balance and all other stuff. I didn't do that well, right? I will tell you right now, I'm like probably 100 pounds, 110 pounds heavier than when I started because, you know, I was on that performance. And man, you know, I went from working out to I just got to win. And the more I performed and I didn't have image and exposure, I was losing and my brand equity wasn't being built. Okay. So, you know, this is just a, you know, a slide. I actually took this from when I worked at P&G, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but when you think about success drivers, and the PVP in the middle stands for purpose, values, and principles. You know, make sure you spend time to identify what's your purpose, values, and principles, and how do you basically link your success drivers to your mind, to the people you work with, and your ability to have agility to change and be agile as much as you possible in this ever-changing environment that we work in, right? Because many times we be in situations where people say, well, that's not what I meant. And you need to change on a dime. And you know, you can't allow yourself to get frustrated. You know, you got to stay in touch. You got to be able to operate with discipline. You got to be able to handle change. And then the mind piece is, you know, what are your core competencies? What are your mastery? Like, how do you think? Right? You know, how do you innovate? And the people, do people consider you as leaders? And do you build diverse collaboration and relationships and growth capabilities? So not going to get a lot into that. This is just something I'm not going to go through all of it, but building your advocacy in a brand called you, this is something, this shows you how pie, if you looked at yourself as a pyramid, with the foundation being who you are, right? And you understanding how you deliver results, to having good relationships, to creating strategic partnerships, to having a win-win mentorship, right? To having visibility and communication, and then maintaining like who is you. You can see how it all fits to the pie model. And this is a pyramid that we used to use years and years ago to remind us in one of the affinity groups I was in, to say you need to be progressing at that level, right? And you need to be linking in all of these things to these various different links of pie model to build your brand equity, okay? To build your brand, okay? And, you know, the last couple slides is when you think about brand equity and applications, I would just encourage you guys, as you have your one-to-ones, right? you know, and if you're not having one-to-ones, you need to be having career calibrations. I wasn't good at that, right? You need to have a mentor, mentee, coach, and sponsor, right? Had coaches, you know, had few mentees, few mentors. I always had mentees, I always mentored people, but I was lacking on having a mentor and having a sponsor. Somebody had their hand on me in my career, somebody could move me, right? And then, you know, definitely having the one-on-ones with your boss and subordinate. So it takes time out of your busy schedule to run people down, to identify people, to make sure that you're having those sessions, right? And then I don't know, like this is something I think is definitely changing in my careers out here. The whole work and development plans, you know, we call stuff so much different today, right? We call it, hey, are you doing Kanban? Are you doing, you know, Scrum processes? But I would just tell you guys, get very, very clear on your work and development. Like, what are you going to deliver from a business results for the next year? What are you going to do from an organizational capability standpoint? What are you going to do from a personal capability standpoint? And then how do you assess yourself from year to year? Don't wait till somebody assess you. You assess yourself as you go out throughout the year, and you make adjustment to your work and development plan, right? And then, you know, as you have these one-to-ones and these conversations, you ask for feedback, right? Whether it's start, stop, and continue, or whether it's just give me feedback from peers, or give me feedback from your boss or subordinates. I don't care where it comes, but you need feedback. You have to ask for it. You have to document it, right? You know, because you don't want to get feedback at the end of the year. You don't want to get feedback when the assessment is time to happen. You don't want any surprises, right? And then you need to make sure you document your career interests. You know, and the whole purpose of a work and development plan is, if I deliver X, you know, will Y be an opportunity for me? And having that conversation and having it on paper, it's almost like an informal contract. And I would tell you what I've seen in my career. I've seen the formal work and development plans go away. And for people of color, it's detrimental, because now you have no documented accountability to say, hey, here's what we agreed to. It's all, do you have that email? Do you keep, like, so I don't know what your companies do today, but having those processes and taking those processes very, 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 from a high importance standpoint, is so critical for your career progression. Okay, so last slide, I'll give you this, right? These three things, right? This is kind of like your homework. You know, and I'm not going to go through it, but like, what are your work plan and activities? You know, what is your personal brand equity? That's a question to you. How are your activities linked to your brand equity? On an image standpoint, ask yourself these questions. What mental impressions do you have of yourself? What mental impressions do others have of you? You know, friends, colleagues, coworkers, right? Can others articulate your brand equity? So whatever you think your brand equity is, are they saying what you think you are, right? And then from an exposure standpoint, like, you know, how often do you write summaries of your work or technical reports of what you do if you're, you know, engineer? How often are you having one-to-ones? You know, do you have healthy mentor and coach and sponsor relationships, right? And how do you develop strategic partnerships, and who are your sponsors? And that's a critical, I kind of put sponsors down there twice, because that's somebody internal to your company or external to your company that will pull you for bigger and better opportunities in the future. And you can meet sponsors just by having conversations like we're having on this Zoom call, or you can meet sponsors in your community, in your churches, in your volunteer organizations. You know, do you sit on any boards? Like, you can meet sponsors a lot of places that people can pull you. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. And then I'll open it up to you guys for any questions or insights or answers. And then I can do my best to try to answer anything that you may have.
Well, thank you for that. I'll start off with a question. You talked about obviously exposure being key. Obviously, we've been virtual for a year now for most of us, going on obviously another maybe a year. What does that do to the exposure component? Or I guess any ideas what we can do to remedy that because we are in a virtual format?
Man, I would tell you what I personally do. I'm always sending summaries out of what my teams are doing, right? So whether that's if you have teams of people working with you, whether you're creating a newsletter, right, and you're advocating for what you're actually delivering and you're celebrating, right? And then the other thing, Tony, is take the opportunity. Anytime somebody do something good, send a note out, right? When your teams or the people you're working with in your organization, or if it's independently, you've had a successful meeting and you just had this breakthrough idea, send a note out, right? Like overly communicate. Don't assume that people know, right? And use that as a way to celebrate your accomplishments, right? Because in this virtual world we in, the only thing people see today, they may see your face on a Zoom or Microsoft call like this, but the only thing they're going to see is emails. And so I would tell you guys, we all technology today, right? You may want to send yourself a note every week to say, what have you done to promote yourself this week? Like, just send a reminder. And believe me, I used to not be good at that. Now that, I have, all of these people in my organization, like I typically gravitate to people, like when I go into an organization, I gravitate to people that they say, this person is underperforming, because I want to understand why they're underperforming. And typically what I find out is that they haven't been recognized for their skills and capabilities. So I go on this marketing campaign. I give them opportunity. I go on this marketing campaign, right? They get the result, and then all of a sudden they be like, "Oh wow, this is phenomenal!" And now all of a sudden I got all of these talented people that want to come because that's been disenfranchised or hasn't been heard, or and they come in, and I'm like, "Hey, them the type of people I want to win with, right? I want the people that people say, well, you know what, they're kind of difficult to work with, they're kind of hard, and I want to see what's making them difficult. And then we promote them. And then by promoting them, right? And it was so funny, you said, I got my feedback on my assessment today from my boss, right? So it was a 30-minute conversation. He had about 10 bullet points, no significant opportunities. But one of the biggest things he said, well, you have a very special skill of coaching and developing people. And the people that were struggling in the organization that they said what they had written off, now everybody wants them, right? Which is cool for me, right? Because you're dealing with people's livelihoods, right? But that's an excellent question. But take accountability to do it yourself, like and. So many times in the career, you hear people say, well, that person always working their career. They're always managing their career. I would just tell you, if you're not managing it, a lot of people not managing it, right? So, great question. Anything else?
Let's say that if some of us have not been working on our image and exposure, how do we start within the organization? What are some of a few things that you could say, start that way?
Yeah, I mean, it really start with those questions to ponder, right? I don't know if I'm still sharing, but on the image piece, I think we have to be real with ourselves. I had to get real with myself because I had people telling me many years ago, and I used to start like in my peer group, I was the last person to get promoted in my peer group. My wife was the second last person to get promoted, right? In our peer group when we first started with the company. And that was out of like 13 people. And so I had to get real with like, what are people saying about me? Because remember, I had that whole mentality, like I really didn't care, I grew up in the hood, man. I grew up in the hood. Like, so I don't care what you say because you're insignificant, right? That's what I was taught. But everybody's significant, and what people say is their perception. So getting clear on what you believe who you are, what other folks believe who you are, and then bridging that gap, right? And then starting to, and I'll give you a perfect example. When I first started the company, folks used to say, what did you do this weekend? I'm like, oh man, nothing, just relax, watch a little football, right? But I actually went to art galleries, right? And looked at art, and because I collect art, I've been collecting art for over 30 years, you know, got a $280,000 collection of art, right? Right. And so I would never tell nobody I bought a piece of art. But when I started saying that stuff, they're like, man, you collect art? Like, who do you collect? Well, what type do you collect? And they start feeling the passion. Then now we got something to bond with. Hey man, you need to let me know when your next gallery opening that you're going to, your wine and cheese. And so I would give out, hey man, I'm gonna be here. So two or three people would show up. Then they started to connect. Now this is the same people that get promoted, and then next thing you know, they're trying to help me get promoted. Right? So that's the image piece, the exposure piece. You just have to consciously, number one, you have to consciously send out information talking about your successes. Number two, you have to ask your leadership, or you have to go secure, you have to have a mentor, somebody you can talk to that you can share anything, non-threatening. You got to get a mentor. And then you got to have a sponsor in the organization. So somebody sitting at least 2 levels up that are you meeting with on some frequency, you're sharing your work plan, you're sharing your results, right? And they have the ability to touch you. They have the ability to work something in your career. And if you don't have that within your company, find some people outside of your company, right? Because I spent 23 years at one company. I don't know if I would do that all over if I would start over. Like, not knowing what I know today, that's a whole nother subject. Knowing what I know today and knowing the wealth out here and the potential of what you can make, I would never. P&G is a great company, but it wasn't that good. Believe me. Okay.
Thank you.
And I gave Francois this presentation, so there's actually some additional slides in the appendix. Typically, this is like a 4-hour discussion with breakout sessions, and you would go off and you would develop your brand equity, and you would have, you would do a lot of exercises and stuff like that. So, Francois, feel free to share. Feel free to modify, make it fit your own personal need, and use it as a way to, if you felt like it was enlightening to enlighten other folks, it may help, it may not, right? But hopefully you guys got something out of it.
Can I also ask a personal question? How did the, Singapore opportunity arise? Is that something you sought out, or was that something they found you, or how did that work out?
With what opportunity?
Going to Singapore? You said you lived in Singapore.
So like at P&G, we kind of career progressed. We had in our work and development plan on the career piece, we had in there that we wanted to do an international assignment. The first opportunity came to us was in Africa, actually, Lagos, and we chose not to do that one just because of we had young kids and we was gonna have to really, really live kind of restricted. I kind of regret that we didn't do it. And so we ended up doing Singapore. It was just a right opportunity. And guys, I'm in a career environment where my wife has the leading career. She has the leading career. So and that's a whole different discussion. This whole dual career side, we chose that her career was the leading career. So I took the more flexible roles within my career, right? To allow me to pick the kids up, do a lot of stuff, right? Where she took probably more challenging roles, highly more visibility, because like I said, she's a lot smarter than me, right? So we both career progressed and went over to Singapore. She was like the director all over Asia for all new business development, Asia and China, Southeast Asia and China. And then I had one of the manufacturing facilities over there. So, but when we went out of the country, Tony, that's when we really saw our worth. Like we had never knew like the worth until we went. I mean, because you see stuff from a global standpoint. Number one, it validated that we got a lot of skill, right? I mean, we working with folks from, I mean, I had 22 sites in China. Used to go to China like all the time. And we just found out like what we had been taught and our skills and capability, it far surpassed anybody that was over there. But guess what? They were higher levels, they were making more money, and they had bigger responsibilities. And we were like, this doesn't make sense. And then we also found out, because of the market over there and people leaving company and changing companies, that they was getting promoted a lot quicker to keep people. And in the US, when it take you 7 years to get to this level, they was getting there in 3.5. It was like, whoa. And then that's when we started looking outside the company. We were like, well, how do other companies progress? And we were like, oh, like, you know, like we've been sleeping through a revolution, you know, and so, and I'll leave you with this, like, and I'm, you know, and this is a whole nother topic, right? But when I work with young people coming out of college today, and I tell young people, I said, you know, about the PI model and why you need to have a work and development plan, and you need to have a career map of where you want to be, like what's your end destination. So today, you're 21, 22 years old. When you want to choose to leave corporate America, and what level you want to be. And so, and I challenge young people, because I wasn't told this coming out of school. If you graduate today at 21, and you're in a Fortune 50 company, right? Working in a Fortune 50 company, and you get to vice president in a Fortune 50 company by age 35. That's 14 years. And people look at you like you crazy, but guess what? I can't. There's so many people on the Met that got to that level. It's more than than I have on my fingers and toes. You get to there by age 35, 37. You worked until you're 60, right? You're probably talking minimum. When you look at the salary, your equity, right? Your promotions, assuming that you're gonna still get promotions, right? You're probably looking minimum $50 million in wealth. Minimum. And those are the things that none of that was never told to me. Now, when I came out in corporate America, I never thought about being vice president or none of that, or executive vice president, right? Like, none of that was told. And it's true. All you got to do is look it up. Just take any VP at a Fortune 50 company, take their salary, and just extrapolate it out. Like for 30, almost, you're there at 35, you work till you 55 to 60, that's 25 years. The math is easy. And I'm telling you, it's possible. Okay? But those are the type of things that, for some reason, and this is just Kelvin perspective, African Americans, we don't share. We don't talk salaries. We don't talk equity. I'm helping a young lady right now that's got 5 years in aerospace. She in her third interview with Apple. She just got her MBA. She got an undergrad from A&T. And so, perfect example, she was saying, well, for me to go to San Francisco, they need to pay me, $190,000 a year. And I'm like, now you need to ask for like 240. She said, what? I say their range is like to 260. It's tech, right? Tech fields today don't ask you what your salary is. They can't ask you for information. Like, they don't ask you. So she got an offer for like 262, which is like $140,000 raise. And she's a senior manager. She's not even a director. So people don't know that, but she was like, man, I didn't know I can ask for that. I'm like, just go online. You can see what people make. I mean, all this stuff around Glassdoor, all these websites, they're pretty accurate. And I didn't know any of that until I chose to go do something different, right? So I just try to share as much as I can. Cool.
It's great.
All right, man. Hey, I mean, I really thank you guys for your time. I thank you, for listening. Right. If there's any questions, Francois has my email. If there's anything you guys ever need, I enjoy helping. I enjoy sharing information. All this information I shared, I got it from someone else, and I just ask you guys to pass it on and just be, advocates for each other and be supporters of each other, right? As we embark on this journey that we're the journey of being, number one, being happy in what we do and fulfilled, and hopefully creating equity and wealth that we could impact our communities. Okay.
It's great.
Thanks.
All right.
Any other questions, everybody else, before he signs off?